going to be talking about the power of naming. And I am partly indigenous. I run with the Red Wolf Clan in Albuquerque. But that's not really very significant, because actually we're all indigenous, because we're all indigenous to this earth. And if we look back not too far away, we'd know we're all from tribes. And tribal people have a tribal consciousness. And part of that tribal consciousness comes in the power of naming. We have always named that which we loved. We have named our skies, our body of waters, our plants, our animals, and certainly we have named each other. And when we named, we didn't do so to claim ownership or to possess. We named to know our relationship. We named to be in relationship. And when we named on purpose. We named in such a way that when we spoke the name of that mountain, or of that lion, or of that human being, we were speaking to remember something sacred in that person, something sacred in that sky, and then we would act accordingly. And when we heard our name, not the name we were born with, but the name of our soul essence, of who we really are and what we're here to do, when we heard that name, when we heard others calling us, we would remember we were sacred. Naming says, let me see if I can get this right here. Naming says, I belong to you and you belong to me. That's our promise. But we've moved away from naming. And we're being called now by our titles. We're in this world of data. We carry these little business cards, and I've got them too, but we're called by our titles, by our function in the world, by how we're compensated. We've forgotten our sacredness. We've forgotten that we belong. In fact, the world of data requires that in order for you to belong to the world of data, and actually it's really not belonging, it's fitting in. It says, data says, we're going to call you by your title, and then we're going to ask you to separate yourself from the crowd. Don't be average. Don't be part of that group. Come out from the crowd, and now that you're out, prove to us that you have meaning. Prove to us that you have value and worth. Do something significant so we'll look at you, and then we'll tell you that you have meaning. We'll tell you that you have value. And here's the thing about data. Data's purpose in the world is threefold. Process, discern, and judge. And then we use that information, storehouse it, and use it for execution. But we've reversed how that's supposed to be. We're using data now as the first place of calling each other. And data isn't about being in a relationship. It's more in the box of utilization. Data has its place, but it doesn't have its first place. We've forgotten who we are to each other, who we are to this world. We've forgotten that we belong to one another. And today I'd like to help you remember that place. Data asks us to covet our individuality, and there's nothing wrong with being an individual person. But it actually tells us to belong. It somehow makes us weak. And frankly, in my opinion, it is our over-reliance on independence that is our greatest suffering. Yes. We were meant to belong to each other. Naming has a different perspective. It actually says, you are relevant. You are relevant simply because you exist. Now I know that sounds airy-fairy. In the world of data and ego, they would say, wow, that's so arrogant. But in the world of belonging, you are relevant simply because you exist. Not only are you relevant, but you are profound. You are profoundly relevant. There's nothing to prove. See, in the world of data and being called by our titles and all that over there, not in itself it's wrong, but if we're leading from that place, let me just be really clear. You are always going to negotiate who you are for what you want in the world. You are always going to negotiate who you are for being validated, for being liked, for being promoted. You are always going to work hard to be seen, to fit in when the world of belonging is calling you. And there was a time in your life when you remembered you were relevant, when you knew you were profound. All you have to do is look at children. They know that they belong. They don't question that. They're all about, look here, focus. Until some adult or some situation comes along and tells them different. And every childhood gets interrupted. There's always a time in our life when some adult comes and says something that tells us we're not as relevant as we thought we were. You should try harder. You try too hard. You're too short. You're not athletic enough. You speak up too much. You should pipe down. And our childhood gets put on pause. We get misnamed. We forget what was sacred about us because we want to believe that the adults in our life are right. I want to call you back to this power of naming. I know for myself, I was misnamed right out the gate. My mother named me Melanie. Now, for all you Melanies out there, like, I'm over it. It's okay. But let me just tell you the story a little bit. I'm cool with it now. It took years of therapy, but I'm okay now. So, my mom named me Melanie after this fictional character in Gone with the Wind. Now, it was a little lost on my mom that A, she wasn't real, and B, she was part of a slave-owning family. Oops, awkward. But my mom named me Melanie because this character had these qualities of, she was just unselfish. She was super appropriate. She was kind and wise and loving. And while those qualities are lovely, they aren't this Melanie. And I really believe when I came out of the womb, my mother saw exactly who I was. And she was afraid. Not of me, but for me. I think she was afraid because I think in her era, she knew what it was like to grow up as a black woman who was challenging and curious. And she knew that that probably wasn't going to be physically safe in this world. But the problem is that I'm not going to be safe being this person either because this isn't who I am. My mother had me watch Gone with the Wind over and over and over again. And she would tell me, oh, I want you to notice the qualities of this human being. And she really wanted me to exude these qualities, but I have to be this Melanie. And well, she actually kind of rectified it in the same moment as my birth because she named me Melanie Ann DewBerry. So I felt a little vindicated when I realized those were my initials. I was like, I'm good with that, Mom. So here's the thing. As I grew up, I got another misnaming. I got called troublemaker so much that I actually believed it. And the truth of the matter is, troublemaker is an accurate naming of who I am, but using it as a pejorative is not true. There wasn't one adult in my life that was curious about what lied beneath the troublemaking. What was the trouble for good I was trying to cause? There wasn't one adult who was trying to elicit my magnificence. It felt like what was really happening is they just wanted me to behave. Oops, let me go back here. Let's behave. And while I understand good social behavior most of the time, it felt like the larger institutions of school, religious communities, nonprofits, and even as I went to work, wanted to put me in some system of behavior modification. They just wanted me to comply so that they could fill me with data, not a bad thing in and of itself, but so they could fill me with data, and then I could be ready to go out into the real world and work. But that work wasn't mine. That world wasn't mine. That grain didn't feed me, because if it did, I would have stayed. So I had to just pretend for a while until I could feel like I could be me. Here's the thing. I didn't know how to negotiate the world. I didn't know how to ask for permission to be who I was or apologize for who I was. Well, I did it for a while, but it didn't work. It doesn't work if we're not allowed to be who we are. Behavior modification is a soul silencer. It is a mute button on our souls. It is a denier of causability, and the truth of the matter is you are a miraculous nature waiting to explode with your unique brilliance and add your collective good to this world, and that cannot be negotiated. No negotiation, no apologizing for who you are, no asking permission. You are profound, you are relevant, and you are profoundly relevant. That is just the truth. Know your unequivocal power. So in a few moments, I'm going to introduce you to some people that have been named. But for those of you who are on the precipice of coming out, who really want to be seen and known for who you are, who want to be called by the essence of who you are deep in your soul so that you're here to give the work you're here to do, I know that you might be afraid. I know that it's scary. I know what I'm asking. I know I'm asking for you to put on your big girl panties and your capes. I get it. I know I'm asking for some of you to defy your cultures, to defy your family, to defy the rules. But it's not defiance, it's actually living. And I have worked with people all over the globe in the last 15 years, and I don't care if they were CEOs, entrepreneurs, stay-at-home moms, or inmates in the federal prison system. No matter what they came for, they all wanted the same things. They wanted to be witnessed for who they were, not what they did. They wanted to be loved simply because they existed, not because they traded on some behavior or some talent or some skill. They want a deep sense of peace, not calm on the water, but deep, riveting peace. And they wanted happiness. Not happiness that can be done in moments or events that can be taken away by sad events, but real sustainable happiness. You cannot negotiate who you are for what you want. If you want these qualities, you have to be who you are in the world. Now, I know you might be saying, well, can I do that? Can I let them know who I am? Can I be the CEO of the bank but teach yoga on the weekends? I've had people tell me I can't tell people that because they might reject me. Well, let me just be clear. You're already being rejected because your hair is too short. I'm pretty sure you were breathing incorrectly earlier. You said the wrong thing. You did the wrong thing. So get rejected for something that's worthy of you. Rejection is just what happens when we live in the data era of processing, discerning, and judging. I'm not saying once you name yourself and you come on out that rejection's not going to happen. I'm saying you're just not going to care anymore. I'm saying when you name yourself, when you tell people who you are and what you're here for, your tribe is going to find you. And you're just not going to care anymore. So let me introduce you to 4 people who've come on out. And then I'm going to, we're going to play some games. You're not just sitting there. We're actually going to play with each other. Yeah, don't get up and leave now. It's too late. I will see you. Oh, I forgot to put that up. Carbon-based miracles, baby. Oh, yeah, I'm not going to do that. Okay. We might come back to that. We'll see. This is Anne. Anne is a poet. She's a coach. She's a neuroscience enthusiast. And I don't know what that NE is there. But Anne's name is the Lyrical Poet of Consciousness because calling her a poet, calling her a coach, an author, and a neuroscience enthusiast, those are all true about Anne, but who she really is in the world is the Lyrical Poet of Consciousness. And Anne is in the business of brainwave change. This is Joaquin. Now, Joaquin asked me to introduce you to him as the sexiest Latino man alive. And while that may be true, he is also a human resource specialist and an athlete. But who Joaquin really is the messenger of the gods, aka Hermes. He's in the business of starting conversations that matter. This is Zoe. She's a yoga guru, workshop leader, Buddhist philosopher. But who she really is Kali Ma the Destroyer. She destroys the false truth. She knows if we don't kill structures that are killing us, we will die. And here's the thing, no matter what they're doing, I don't care if they're scrubbing toilets or leading workshops or running businesses, they are always Kali Ma. They are always Hermes. They are always who they are. They are the lyrical poet of consciousness. That is how they touch the world. That is how they move. They do not negotiate who they are for whatever situation they are in. This is who they are. And the truth of the matter is, they could have said no. They could have said, yeah, I know I'm Kali Ma, but I'm not going to tell people because that's weird. People are going to think I'm weird. Well, people probably already do, so it's not a problem. I'm not going to tell people I'm Hermes because I don't want them to think that I don't know what I'm doing. They could have said no because we're the only species on the planet that can. That's the power we have. We have the power of choice. We can say yes to ourselves and remember that we're sacred human beings that are profoundly relevant, or we can conform to the world of data. And conforming is what we'll have to do. We're like little batteries that are just ready to go. Or we can say no, and we can be leaky, toxic waste batteries. We can say no to who we are. We could say, you know what, I'm going to be Kali Ma, but I'm not going to tell people. I'm going to mute it down. I'm going to color it up. I'll call it something pretty. I'll call it something corporate so I don't scare people. Yeah. You cannot negotiate who you are for what you want. There isn't any negotiating your power. You're either in your power or you're not. You're either accepting who you are or you're something else. You're either fitting in the world of data or you're belonging. You're belonging to your right tribe. So here's the good thing. I think it's a good thing. And that's the slide back, which I'm not going to go to, was on resonance. Here's what the power of naming does. That is a very good thing. So if you're a little scared, this is like your get out of jail card. The power of naming creates resonance. And what does resonance do? It does two things simultaneously. And this is kind of as scientific as I get, and it's not very scientific, but it's going to be profound. Play with me. Resonance does two things at the same time. It creates a visceral kinesthetic experience that we feel, and it starts to tell a story. Subconsciously, we actually see a movie. So, and those two things happening at the same time create agreement. People agree who you say you are. They create an experience, they see a movie, and they agree. Now, I'm not saying that they like you. I'm saying they agree that you are who you say you are. And we're constantly looking for opportunity to create relationship. So for example, I was in one of the government liquor stores. I wasn't buying, I was just looking. Excuse me. I was just looking. And I see this young man checking out, and this other young man says, "Oh, are you Taiwanese?" And he said, "Yes, yes, I am." And the gentleman said, "Yes, well, I worked in Taiwan for a couple of years. I lived there." And in that moment, they had an agreement. They had agreement that they were in relationship, because that's what resonance creates. It creates an agreement that you are who you say you are, an agreement that we are going to be in relationship. So the minute you say who you are, the minute you come out of the closet, the minute you confess, this is who I am and this is what I'm to bring to this world, there is agreement that that is true. So let me give you an example of that. So this is the playing part, okay? So don't leave me up here. I'm going to shout out one location and two names, and I want you to shout back your experience of this place. You can use adjectives or verbs, whatever you want, but shout out a couple of adjectives and verbs, maybe even a noun, of your experience. And it doesn't matter whether you've been there or not, or whether you've seen this place or not. There is universal agreement about what is true about this place, and I'll prove it to you. So the name of the location is the Mediterranean Sea. Now play with me. Adjectives or verbs, whether you've seen it or not, whether you've been there or not, what is your experience of this location, the Mediterranean Sea?
Blue. History.
Oh, we have an intellectual in the office. Okay, yes. Blue, beautiful. You might even have a kinesthetic experience of warm, or as I like to call it, yummy. Whether you've been there or not, I'm sure there's plenty of storms that have taken place in the Mediterranean Sea, but the universal agreement is that it's beautiful, it's blue, it's salty, and maybe even you want to be there. That's the universal agreement. That is what happens when we all agree kinesthetically and we see the movie unconsciously, subconsciously in our mind, we see the movie of the Mediterranean Sea, whether we've been there or not. Okay, so I'm going to throw out two celebrity names, and I want you to just like toss out some adjectives and verbs. Lady Gaga and Madonna. I don't know if they're confused. They look pretty clear to me. Provocative. I think, see, it doesn't matter whether you like them or not. It's just about the truth of them. They are provocative. We would agree probably they are bold, that they are cutting edge, that they're going to do something out of the box, right? It's not about whether you're liking them. In fact, if you were a fan, if they weren't doing that, you might be disappointed. And here's the cool thing about naming yourself this way. When you name who you are, there's an expectation that you get to be that person, and we're all sitting around waiting. And this is the time when expectations are really good. We are sitting around waiting. I have watched my elders on the reservation name people. And they name so that they don't have to negotiate. And then the community sits and waits for their particular carbon-based miracle to explode into the world. Once you are named, there is permission for you to be you. There's universal agreement about who you say you are. And now the world has an expectation that you get to be the sacred being. And you will remember who you are and why you're here. You will not negotiate your profundity anymore. Okay, so here's the next piece of the playing. So the first thing I want you to do is I want you to just turn to the person to the right of you, if that's possible, and I want you to do the normal introduction. But I'm going to ask you, as you do the normal introduction, hi, my name is Melanie DewBerry, and I'm a speaker. I want you to just kind of feel that. I am a coach. We do that feeling stuff. I'm Californian. So just play with me. Just notice what you experience, and just do your traditional introduction. and then let that person introduce themselves and experience their introduction, okay? And so I'm going to give you about 10 seconds each way. The person with the shortest hair goes first. Introduce yourself to the person next to you. Go. Else you're talking about afterwards? So I don't know if I'll be able to hear all the comments, but did you experience that? How was that? What did you, I guess the question would be, what was the experience of that? Friendly. Awkward. Awkward, yeah, awkward. Absolutely awkward. Educated knowing. Do you feel like you got a sense of this person's story? That you got an invitation to know who they were at their soul's essence. Yeah. But this is what we settle for every single day. And I'm not saying that we're not intrigued by what people are doing or we're not interested, but mostly we're looking for how we can utilize them later. Like, I'll be calling you. So, like that. It's not bad. But naming is about creating an experience. It's about belonging. It's about the invitation to know each other deeply. And in the world of data, we've made that kind of knowing wrong. The data world's got a lot of language around that, about making it too woo-woo or too touchy-feely, as though that is a bad thing. When was that a bad thing? Why are we making that a bad thing when we all really just want to be seen? So now, I'm going to ask you to do a different kind of introduction. So I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to process this. And I know it's going to be a little awkward because it's on the fly. I get it. But I want you now to consider 2 adjectives or verbs that describe what you're here to bring to the world. Now, maybe it's your work, maybe it's not. But you know who you are. You always have known your profundity and your relevance. Don't act like this is new, because it's not. We're taking the pause button off the childhood interrupted, and we're giving you permission to just be who you are. So I want you to think of 2 adjectives or verbs that most describe who you are at your core essence and what you're here to bring. And you're going to complete this sentence. I'm in the business of. And your words are adjectives. So for me, it's I'm Melanie DewBerry. I'm a wordologist. And I'm in the business of troublemaking and wisdom. So take a moment and do some self-reflecting. And come up with your 2 adjectives and verbs. And now turn to the person that you just spoke with. Person with the shortest hair goes first. And so if you're bald, that's you. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. I like bald people. Purr. Okay, turn to the person next to you and introduce yourself. I am in the business of adjective and verb. And if you got a noun, what the hey, throw the noun in. Okay? But go. You have about 20 seconds, and then let them introduce themselves to you. Go. Okay, make sure the other person goes too. Okay, and come on back. So what was this introduction like? Do you feel like you got a deeper knowing, a point of relationship with this person at some level, even if it was awkward? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love that. Thank you. That's the right answer. Be curious about your nature. Be curious about the people with you. Call them back into their sacredness. We belong to each other. Be brave. Be named. Be provocative. And belong. Hey, matakiese.